Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures once again. Tonight, as you might have seen on the Facebook group there, or the Facebook page, we're going to be talking about bushcraft vehicles. Now, in all fairness, this is kind of your thing, Ben. You were talking to me about it, and it was kind of one of those
My,
light bulb moments like, where are you at? It looks like your screen is froze in the most awkward of places. There we go. We're good. You're live again, bud. One
that's
technical
good.
difficulty. But that was my fault. I clicked off your window and I know I have to keep it open. But in any case,
I
yes,
gave
bushcraft
you 2%
vehicles.
chance, no issues.
Yeah, it's 0%. 0% chance, Ben.
Okay, that's it. Okay.
But yeah, bushcraft vehicles. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you mean when you say looking for a bushcraft vehicle? Because that was the first question I had, and then I kind of got my head around it.
Yes, it's the whole concept comes, and we won't get too deep into it because there's secrets involved in this. But the reality is, if you're going to go out with your family, your friends, or whatever, you kind of need a way to get out there. And the problem that sort of brought it to my attention is I have two vehicles, and neither one are what you call bushcraft. I have a Dodge Dart, which is an awesome little city car, but has no clearance and has the thinnest of tires you can imagine. Uh, 225, 45, R17s don't give you much give if you hit a bump or anything.
No, I don't
I call it,
imagine.
right? Uh, and then I have a minivan, and well, minivans are great people haulers, but not necessarily the greatest woods. But it is the better of my options, and it has a hitch, and it has capability of roof racks, which are things I like in a vehicle. But it's also new, which is not something I like in a bushcraft vehicle. You're going to tear the paint up on it. You're going to dent the bottom on it. You're going to bump it around a bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%.
So this got me to thinking. I was talking to my wife, and we were discussing it would might be advantageous to try to come up with a bushcraft vehicle, something that would be, and I wanted to set some parameters for this. To me, it needs to be road legal. If you have to have another vehicle to lug it around, it's not really an advantage to me. You know,
Completely agree. If you can't get to where you want to go, it's not a vehicle, it's a toy.
yeah, that's the thing. Quads are great. Dirt bikes, if they have the signal lights and you can license them, you can get into the woods with them. Me and you took our motorcycles, but I think both of us would agree not the ideal bushcraft vehicle.
No, not at
Uh,
all. We had difficulties getting up, once again, not really a dirt road, but kind of a woods road. We ran into difficulties there, which would have been alleviated a lot easier with a proper vehicle.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I say that a lot. When we were driving up that road, it was a little. I mean, both of us, I would consider us, at least average to above average skill level on a motorcycle.
Okay, I'll take the compliment.
I know some professional motocross riders. I mean, I'm probably not quite their skill level, but I'm pretty good. I'm confident on the bike. And when those ruts and that loose gravel, it's a street bike isn't perfect. It definitely isn't. It takes a lot of skill to keep your bike up and right and not ditching it, and it takes away from the enjoyment, and it limits how far you'll push it, how long you're going to go. And in fact, those slow speeds, my bike tends to start to get kind of warm. Like the electronic fans cut in. You heard that when we parked. So never had that happen on a highway. But go down a dirt road at a slow speed, just crawl, it's going to warm up. Not designed for it. I know you've got a fair bit of experience with trucks. I think you have a Ranger now.
I do.
Um, we talked. I mean, I had a Ranger, and that's a good example of what I consider probably a decent little off-road vehicle. They're small, so you can get down to narrower trails. You get a 2500 or F250.
Just
You
too
are
wide
limited.
then. You're just too wide. Your mirrors, you might as well leave them home because they won't be there when you come out of the woods.
Well, that's yeah. You get a grown-in row. You get thicker brush. There's no way you're pulling that big vehicle through safely without maybe a chainsaw going with it. It has its limitations. Um, so, anyways, I was started getting into this. So, road legal, preferably 4x4 or all-wheel drive. I'll take either or. I think there's advantages to each. I'm saying 8 inches plus ground clearance. That doesn't sound like a lot, but I think the Wranglers, the Jeep Compasses are around 8.7 stock.
I'm trying to think what my Ranger has right now, and I don't think it's 8. I mean, from the center of the bell housing, or not the bell housing, that's the front rear end's the lowest point. I'd be hard pressed to have 5.5, 6 inches, and I mean that doesn't sound like much, but once again, I've never had a problem with it.
Yeah, I quickly Googled average ground clearance, and there was a handful. Like some of the Subarus, I think the Outback has actually a relatively good ground clearance. I think it was around the same thing, just over 8 inches. So that's kind of the area I'm looking at. I have a family of 5. I have friends I might like to take with me. Doesn't always make sense to take 4 or 5 vehicles in the woods, nor does everyone have one. So I'm thinking seating of 5 plus is pretty reasonable.
Well, that sounds reasonable, especially for your case, because you have yourself, your wife, and your 3 daughters. So,
Um, I think one of the big reasons I pulled the van is I got the roof racks and a hitch on the back. So those things, you got a roof rack and a hitch. You can throw canoes on there, kayaks, bicycles, pull a trailer. You got some options. If you need to tow yourself out, you got a decent solid point to hook to.
this
You
was
laugh.
one. No, I was just looking. Chris actually mentioned the one I was going to mention to you, but I think it might be a little small for you. Suzuki Sidekick or Suzuki Samurai. Those things will go anywhere. But
Yeah,
especially with the Samurai, you're a little limited on room. It's kind of like a Jeep Wrangler, but shrunk.
yeah, and the Chevy Tracker, the old version, is virtually the identical vehicle. A buddy of mine fell in love with those. He's owned a couple, especially even when I was bigger. I found it very cramped to sit in. But yes, no, as a small, capable off-road vehicle, very well suited. Vehicle may not fit my particular criteria here. And the other thing is kind of cheap to maintain and like I said, road legal earlier. So that's hits most of my points here, you know. All-wheel drive, decent clearance, can carry a family of 5, roof racks, hitch, cargo, tow hooks on the front, or at least an ability to hook onto something, because you ever heard hook onto the front of my Dodge Dart, I think you're going to lose some.
Well, you know what's funny enough about those new vehicles, and I just learned this about mine, is in a lot of the newer vehicles, even the what does Mel got there? The Rondo. There's a spot in the front where there's a plug that pops out, and there's a hook that's stored under the
Yeah.
rear, and you tie that in, which actually gives you a pretty good, solid purchase point to pull out. And I wasn't aware of this. It was actually her father that pointed it out to me. I always thought that plug was for the block heater, but apparently those aren't so common anymore either.
Oh, so the hook is stored in the back somewhere?
Yeah, usually it's under the trunk cover somewhere, or there'll be a little hatch or something like that. Mine, if you lift it up, it's right there. Like I don't have a spare tire, but under there, there's a jack, and there's 2 of those tow hooks that screw in.
I'll definitely have to take a look for that. I honestly thought you had to purchase them separately, or towing companies would have them. But I did know you could pull them out. I've often seen people leave them in there. It's just like a little eye bolt sticking out of the front of the vehicle.
Mine's quite large for the Rio. It's like that size. I wouldn't want to leave it in there. But
Oh, yeah.
I do know the ones you're talking about. Those ones usually get recessed a little. On her car, literally, this thing would be sticking out past the front bumper a good 4 inches, just this round hook.
Oh, yeah.
So
Cool. Yeah. So, yeah. So there's kind of the breakdown. And I mean, like I said, what we kind of really are, I guess, going to discuss is what are you taking the vehicle out for? What are you doing with it? And the things I'm going to throw in there is you want to do some backwards camping. You want to get back to lakes. You want to do some fishing. You want to, if you're going to do that, you're going to want potentially a boat or the ability to move your toys. So a hitch, even if you can pull 1,000 pounds, that's a small quad or a dirt bike. So the bigger quads might be a bit over 1,000 by the time you throw them on top of a trailer.
Yeah, for sure. I'm thinking I got a Honda Foreman 500. It's not a big 1000
Yeah.
cc ATV by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a little big when it comes to the 500 cc's, and I think it's still around 500 pounds or something like that. Like it's not light by the time you get the cargo racks on it and the passenger seat and all that goodies. I mean, it's a significant amount of weight. I guess first and foremost, what I'm hearing here is number one, just to get that out there so everybody has no misunderstanding, this is not a mudding vehicle. This is a utility vehicle to be used as a utility vehicle to get you to and from a campsite, per se.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not a mudding vehicle. It has to be road legal, which means it has to pass a safety inspection, a legal safety inspection before anybody chimes up with those purchased ones or photocopied ones, which is all the rage right now. Have you seen that? Just to diverge a little bit, that they're making great knockoffs, but apparently the color is off ever so slightly, and people are getting ticketed for them everywhere.
Oh
But
no.
in any case, another story, another day. So it has to be legally roadworthy, fairly easy to upkeep, which is that's going to be the harder one, I think, for you, because as soon as you bring in all-wheel drive, you come into some complications there with upkeep, especially as they get older. And even four-wheel drive, like my Ranger, it's a 2009, only has 130,000 kilometers on it, and I think I've serviced the front end twice on it. So I
Yeah.
mean, not great cost, but are
No.
you expecting to do the work yourself or have somebody else do the work for you? Because that's going to dictate a lot of your costs as well.
Well, I have a mechanical background. I, I mean, I don't know if we've mentioned this before. I was trained as an aircraft maintenance engineer, so mechanical, electrical. I can pretty well do most things. I do have limited resources, as in I don't have an indoor garage, so anything I do is generally outside, which does have some limitations. But I have the skill and knowledge to do most repairs.
Well, I can
Don't
guarantee
mind.
you that most cars aren't going to be as complicated as an aircraft, or I wouldn't think they would be. You're not defying the laws of physics here. You're scooting along the road.
Well, you would think that, but the reality is a lot of new technologies come out in cars 10, 15 years before they're considered proven enough to end up in a lot of aircraft. And the aircraft I tend to work on were mostly built in the 70s and 60s originally.
So, just point of interest for you. Chris is saying that a Honda, maybe an older Honda CRV, might be something for you to look at. Uh,
Sierra, I've looked at a few of those, the Suburbans and Tahoes, but they're so big, right?
well, yeah, now you're getting into too big. But like you said, the older CRVs, they're not gigantic, but they do have a fair amount of room. Like in the cockpit, they got, I think, two in the front and three in the back seat, just a bench seat. Maybe not all the leg room you'd want in the back, but enough. I mean, you would manage. You wouldn't be
We're
without.
not looking straight here.
I mean, I might be a little uncomfortable, but um, but no, Honda CRV actually, those things are pretty bulletproof too, from what I know. I've never owned one myself, but my buddy's owned two, and he swears by them, like that they never have problems. Now the newer ones, I know they had some drivetrain issues there when they first changed over to that new design, but I think they got all that worked out too.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking with the wife. She sort of kicked this off, and I know she's kind of pissed now that she did because I I become semi obsessed with things for a while, and I'll dig into them, and it becomes my passion. And so I asked her to set some kind of budget, and she said $2,000. I'm like,
That's
that's
tight, but I mean, if
that's
you're willing to do a little work, it's not
yeah.
unreasonable or not unobtainable, I guess is the more realistic word I'm looking for.
It would be trickier. I think you're probably going to end up closer to the 3 grand, and that she wanted 2 grand as taxes, repairs, everything.
Ooh, okay, now you're into whole new territory. That means you're looking at about 1,500 for this thing with very little problems. Because
Yeah,
you're
like
going
you.
to be looking at a couple hundred for taxes, 15% in good old Nova Scotia.
Yeah,
Unless you
So
get it, what is it, older than 20 years, and then you just pay whatever's written down, and they don't hit you for Blue Book.
yeah, well, I mean, I am kind of looking like when I start Googling it, you're definitely looking at 10-year plus vehicles. A lot of them are to the 15, 20-year range.
Hmm.
And then as you get past that, it seems like the price almost goes back up. Like if it's still running and it's from like the 90s, people want money for it again. I don't know what happened. Like,
My only guess on that is the build quality, because late 80s, early 90s, build quality was, my opinion, not professional opinion, my opinion, slightly better than what you got today, only because there was a lot more metal in vehicles, good, bad, or otherwise. As long as these vehicles were maintained and undercoated and stuff like that. Otherwise, like my old vehicles, the bodies will rot out of them. But getting back to my point, with the steel bodies, they are heavier, all that good stuff, but they tend to hold up better over time. A little rub on a bush isn't going to tear your fender off. It might scratch it up, but it's not going to tear it off and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like the parts and rear ends, they build heavier rear ends. Just the components themselves seem to last longer. They didn't build a disposable car. I've had people from the car industries, like actually in sales and in the mechanic side of them and stuff like that, working for big company names, tell me that a car is designed as a disposable car. They want you to have it for 10 years, throw it out, buy a new one. And 10 years is
oh,
pushing it. That number is coming down and down and down and down. Like they're literally looking at cars like you would refrigerators. Well, now even refrigerators are a bad example. More like I don't know, something that's consumable at this point. I'm trying to think. Any major appliance, honestly, is consumable. You expect to change it every 5 to 10 years, and that's basically what a car has become, according to these
oh yeah.
individuals. Well, cheaper and cheaper
Uh,
and cheaper with more and more and more technology. I mean, the technology that's in the car, say 2019, is going to be far superior than what you got in 1999. But the price point is only a little bit more than what you would have paid in 1999 for the same car, if that makes any kind of sense. Like a CRV might be 28,000. I don't know what a CRV is. I'm pulling numbers out of my head here. Let's say a CRV is 35,000 for a base model, and in '99 it might have been 28,000. So your
yeah.
inflation has increased that price a little bit, but the technology that's slammed into that thing should put that price up exponentially. So to try and keep those down to realistic markets, because trust me, they do want to turn a profit, they cheap out on everything they can. So everything's built by the lowest bidder, with the absolute minimum of safety requirements and quality testing, and it just turns into basically disposable vehicles, right? That's the way it was explained to me. So if it's a lie to you, it's a lie, or sorry, if it was a lie to me, it's a lie to you.
But just look at the whole fiasco with Volkswagen a few years ago with trying to rig their machines to pass the emissions test. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's a business. They're there to make money. They're not there to make you a product that's going to last forever. No one really was. Toyotas have a reputation of lasting 20 years in general. That was their selling point 10, 15 years ago, saying that like 95% of the vehicles they made in the last 20 years are still on the road or something silly like that. I mean, it
Yeah, I
was a
remember that. It
national.
was what was the big famous Toyota Corolla? I
Yeah.
remember seeing their commercial, and it had that stat in it.
And the Camry, I think, was similar. And if you look at some of the Toyota SUVs and that they have a more aggressive look. Their stance sits a little higher than the average SUV. And their trucks. If you just take a look at a Tacoma or at a Tundra and just look at it next to,
I
it's a Ford. They have a better approach angle,
Oh, for
higher.
sure. When I lived in Westville, I had a Ford Ranger and my neighbor had a Toyota Tacoma. Very similar years. I'm trying to remember what the year was. It was like 99 or 98. I can't remember. In any case, it was 3 liter engine. The Tacoma was very similar, whatever their close engine is to that. Like the trucks side by side, they looked eerily similar, except that the Toyota had a higher stance, a little wider stance, like you said, a better approach angle. And the last big thing that really made me tip my hat to Toyota was they backed their products way better. Both our vehicles, the frames started rotting out. Apparently, during that year, it was really common to have the frames made in Korea or something like that. They weren't used to the weather having so much salt in them, so there was no salt inhibitor put into the metal. Apparently, that's a thing. But in any case, the frames rotted out on these things, and Toyota, even this would have been 2000, let's say 2009, no idea. So
Yep.
even 10 some odd years later, 10 teen years later, Toyota's like, oh yeah, good enough, send it back to us. We'll put a brand new frame under that truck for you. No problem. We stand by it. You call Ford up, they're like, not a chance. And literally, I got rid of the truck because the frame rotted out, and the neighbor got a brand new frame thrown under his.
A guy across the street, he was similar thing. I think he just bought the truck, and they did the recall, and they ended up buying back most of the trucks at significantly more than their book value was. Not like 5-10 times as much, but it was like 1.5 to almost 2 times what the book value of it was. They rather than changed frames out on a bunch of them. I don't know how many went through that. Some of them are still around though, so some people obviously got them repaired. There was different things done with them. So, yeah, I mean, we got a lot of vehicles. We got a lot of options. The Subarus. I've been looking at the Subarus. They have probably a second to none all-wheel drive system.
And I can't argue that. I used to have a little Subaru station wagon that was all-wheel drive. Thing was bulletproof until my sister blew the motor up. It had small oil leaks. She ran it without oil, seized it solid. But I mean,
Yeah.
other than that, that thing worked flawlessly as long as you threw a catch pan under it at night and poured the oil back in the morning. No, I'm dead serious. That's what you did. When you parked it for the night, you threw a pan under it. And then in the morning, you dumped that oil back in, and you always kept a 4-liter in the back. Mind you, this was back in like the early 90s when this wasn't so uncommon. When you were in the backwoods of like Barney's River.
I used to have a Chevy Nova, a little 4-door car. Not the cool Chevy Nova, like the 1987 Chevy Nova.
Oh, okay.
That was really a Toyota Corolla in disguise, because it had the Toyota 4A engine in it. And I used to pull up to a gas station, check the oil. Check the oil. I usually poured in some oil. Like if I did 200-300 kilometers, a liter of oil went into the engine. I didn't even check the oil before
Just dump it in.
Right. And I pulled up to a gas station one time, and I got out, and I opened up the hood, and I just grabbed the liter, because it's just sitting in the passenger seat. I used so much of it. And I bought the cheapest stuff, the Walmart Tech 2000. Looked like water. Don't know if it did anything. But I would open it up, and I just pour a liter right in, and this guy was walking by, can't do that, you got to check it first. I'm like, I know, it's down at least to that.
No, I don't. Trust me, I've done this before.
I drove 200 kilometers. It's good for at least a liter. But that was just the way it was. And there was a guy at work, he had a Volkswagen. He used to do the same thing. You see him pull in the morning and pour a liter of oil in it. Just run away.
I mean, it was a different time. It was actually a common practice. The Subaru I'm telling you about, it wouldn't be kind of my neighbor. He was like 3 or 4 houses up. He owned a little backyard mechanic shop, like actual shop. And I used to just go over and be like, can I have your waste oil? That's how much mine used to burn. Like, I paid $300 for this Subaru. Don't get me wrong. This thing was like, I bought this thing expecting just to destroy it. Anyway, I was putting used oil in it. Anything that would land in it that seemed like it might lubricate it is what I put into this thing. But like I said, different time. It was accepted then. Now people would probably look down on the practice off... it's not an oil leak. It's marking its territory, right? So,
no, they looked down on it then, because when I had that Toyota, I used to pick up a guy to drive him to school, and I did it 2-3 times in a row, and then eventually the owner of the property literally came out and said, "I would like it if you wouldn't park in my driveway."
Oh, paved driveway, right?
He had a paved driveway, and I literally had to park like away, so this guy had to walk to me. I wasn't allowed to park.
Okay, yours was leaking a little faster than mine was, I think. Because mine, if you parked for like 10 minutes, you might have a couple drops.
Well, this is all it was. But this guy's driveway, you could eat off this guy's driveway, right? And when I pull in, 1 or 2 drops would land. He'd come out. You see me, he'd be cleaning that spot off, right?
Different times.
That's all I could afford. It was,
and that's the thing.
I was lucky. I was a student. I didn't really have great income. I was living on student loans and a few dollars I could find here or there, really. And it wasn't within my my family's ability to really give me any money or much support. So, you know, I had to make do with what I could find, and $1,000 vehicles that required repairs is usually what we did. You know, and
I hear you. Just a story that's going in my head to before we go a little further into our subject, because I think some people will get a kick out of this because it is kind of relatable. Do you know what I mean by a Hyundai Pony?
yes,
So a buddy of mine had a Hyundai Pony, and you're talking bushcraft vehicle. You would think this thing would be terrible for bushcrafting, right? I
no,
can't name one place in Nova Scotia he couldn't put that car. Not one. Like, I'd be looking at it with my truck going, nah, man, it won't go there. And he's like, sure it will. And off he'd go. And I mean, like, this thing was wrecked. Like, I mean, rickety wrecked kind of deal. But in any case, that Hyundai Pony, rear wheel drive, I think we welded the exhaust back onto it 6 times in one day. Just from him bombing around roads. We literally go somewhere, we come back out, we pick the exhaust up, throw it in the back, and we drive to Pat's shop, tack weld it back on, and get going again. But I mean, that was surprisingly nimble for a little car. So you can't always judge a book by its cover, because I wouldn't have said that was a bushcraft vehicle. And I mean, if you were just kind of a solo guy and you had a little bit of gear with you, don't pass up on some of these old quote unquote beater cars, because you never know what they're capable of. I mean, it's if you don't spend a lot of money, don't expect to get a lot of car, but what you do get may surprise you with what it can do.
well, I growing up, I had when I was in college, I ended up with 2 cars because I had cheap cars. But the first one was that Nova, and I took that everywhere. I did whatever I had to do with it. There was a couple of trips that I went with my cousin. My cousin watched the show. He'll remember this. He'll get a kick out of it. If you ask, I'll tell you the whole true story. But it's not necessarily completely appropriate for our channel. But we decided to go camping one time, and there was a rock quarry outside of Gander, Newfoundland. So this was where my cousin wanted to go. He had the old Cherokee, the square box Cherokee.
Yep.
And we went down to the quarry, and it's a big dugout, cliffs on 3 sides, and a pond on the 4th side. The only way in was to drive through the pond. So I drive up to the pond, but I wasn't driving through the pond in my my little Nova. But my cousin in his Jeep Cherokee, he said, like, "Bring it, we'll drive through." And he drove through, and I swear to God, water was rolling over the hood. It was splashing up over the side windows, like not splash, but like literally, like you could see under the water through it. You know what I mean? And he just kept going. He wouldn't stop. And every night you hit a rock and the whole thing tipped. You're like, man, if this thing shuts down here, you're not getting her back going, right? Like we are swimming. This thing probably is close to floating height. When we get to the other side, it wasn't a huge pond. I mean, probably 200-300 feet that we drove through. And at deepest, it was, like I said, the window height on a slightly, probably stock height Cherokee. And we camped back there for 2-3 nights. We had gone in 2-3 days before, and we cut a whole bunch of trees and literally threw down the cliffs so they'd be in the bottoms. We'd have firewood and building materials to build camp and all that. And I was back there, and he left. He went to pick up a buddy, and I was there with my girlfriend, and she this is May 2 for him. I remember it clearly. We were both cutting something on a little cutting board, and she cut me with one of those Ginsu knives. Remember the Ginsu knives?
I do remember the Ginsu knives. We're aging ourselves now.
But they were being sold at the dollar store by the time I could afford them. And she cut me pretty good on one hand. And we were looking over at that lake, and like, there's no way for me to get to my car to get to a hospital or anything until my cousin gets back. So we ended up staying there. I bandaged myself up and didn't end up going to the doctor. But we stayed there for a night, and it literally snowed that weekend enough that it collapsed our tents.
That's actually a fair amount of snow.
Yeah, like we went to bed at night. It was cold. I'm not going to lie to you. It was pretty cold. I had the advantage of a girlfriend to help keep me warm. My cousin had to figure it out himself. And his buddy Boots, I think, joined us. He slept in my cousin's Jeep, so I don't know how warm or cold he was. But I can remember waking up in the middle of the night, and I felt something touch my face. And I looked up, and it was the two sides of the tent. They just completely collapsed down under the weight. And I had to get out, middle of the night, trying to follow the guidelines out, shaking the snow off in my, in my underwear outside, fixing it all up. It was, it was a great trip. We really enjoyed it. But that was the advantage of a vehicle. That was what we're talking about. Like that Cherokee allowed him to drive places you wouldn't normally. It was still road legal. Had all the cargo room. Was able to carry his buddies across the lake and all our gear. Everything got fit into the back of it. This is the type of thing I'm talking about. And he posted on our little teaser that the Wrangler to him is the ideal vehicle, and they've owned the Unlimiteds and they're Jeep people, and I agree. Wrangler, awesome vehicle, not a budget vehicle.
Not a budget at all, and the Wrangler cargo room, if you slam 5 people in that, most of your cargo would have to be strapped to the roof, wouldn't it? Because they don't have the biggest cargo space in the back.
You've got some space in the back. You could put the little carrier in the hitch and strap down some like watertight sort of tough box or Rubbermaid containers or something.
I was going to say, you start bringing a trailer and you bring a whole other, I'm not going to say complication, but another set of challenges to bringing a vehicle down an old road. Because what the vehicle may be able to take, the trailer may necessarily not be able to take. Is that a safe assumption?
Possibly. Trailers can be pretty tough. And the nice thing about a trailer, what I look like, I have a little utility trailer. I'll take that the next trip I'm going, which is in a few days. And it's kind of what kicked this off is that's what I'm going to take because I don't have the crossbars for my roof racks. So I can't strap anything to the roof of my vehicle comfortably. I don't really like having straps chafing across the paint and stuff. I want nice secure points. And I'm not pulling things through my windows. I think that's a stupid idea.
I've seen that done, and I don't like it done either. In the case of emergency, your windows are now ratchet strapped, your doors are now ratchet strapped closed.
Well, the other thing to do is that you leave the doors open, run them through, and close the door on the ratchet straps, and I really don't like that idea either. I think it puts undue strain on the doors, and it's just, I don't know. Some people think it's a good idea, and I'm not going to tell them it is or it isn't, but it's not for me. And with the minivan, good luck. I mean, you got those rails coming across. It'll just slice those things off or screw up my doors.
Oh, yeah. It would ruin the minivan. But with the minivan, if you pull all the back seats out, you have a significant amount of cargo space.
I do. Still not enough room for a 12-foot kayak.
That's fair.
Enough for a 16-foot canoe. So I have about an 8-foot-long box trailer. The overall trailer is probably 12 feet with the tongue and all that. And that's what I'll take. I'll go down to the cabin or whatever. I'll pick up. I have a few kayak options or a canoe option. I haven't figured out what I'll take yet. And I'm going to strap it to that and I'll bring it in. Now it's light as hell, so it bounces all the way. You look back there and the thing's just like a jackrabbit on speed, all over the place.
Trailers generally don't work well super light, as you said. They tend to bounce around, and boats aren't that heavy.
I need a couple of fat guys to sit back to.
I volunteer if you drive all the way down here to get me.
You couldn't get off work. I asked you.
I know. I tried. Something fierce. I need 2 weeks, unfortunately. 2 weeks to book a day off work without taking a sick day vacation.
That would be a horrible idea.
I know.
What kind of person would do something like that?
I don't know. Everybody does it legally and gets their vacation days in, but not this guy. Anyway, yeah, so what's some other nice things to look for? Because I know you and I had mentioned, and I said one of the things that I like about my Ranger is that I have some skid plates. So for me, something that's nice on a bushcrafting vehicle or just a woods vehicle in any way, because my previous job, I used to do forest firefighting, and I used to put the skid plates on because you never know what could fly up and hit you. And I mean, it is something stupid when a stick comes up and I'm trying to think what I've had a stick come up and actually break my gas tank strap and drop my gas tank out. So that sucked, mind you. Once again, this was old and the strap was probably ready to break anyway. But and I've had rocks go through like the the oil pan and stuff like that. And since I put the skid plates on the Ranger, it came with a flimsy pair, but I have since beefed them up. Once again, like yourself, I'm not going to say I'm mechanically inclined. I'm mechanically adventurous. Uh, I do have a welder, and I strengthen them up a little bit. And I mean, I have actually bounced over like logs and stuff like that and just slid across the skid plate. To me, as long as you're careful and you know what you're doing and you size things up, that's an advantage to me because you can kind of bounce yourself over um, some things like that. And the skid plate just gives you that extra armor, that extra safety, just so you're not left stranded high and dry. Once again, it's probably not so big of an issue on SUVs and stuff like that because they're pretty, everything's nice and tucked up in under the frame rails, and they generally have a pretty good solid bottom on them. But in my instance, where I got the truck, everything basically from the cab back is just wide open and empty space, and your front rear end tends to be really exposed on those things as well. So, what's your
Yeah,
thoughts on those?
I like the idea, and I think if I do get something and I start playing with it, that I will make a trip out to visit you, and we will figure out how to attach said type of device
Oh, we
onto
can
the
do
body.
it. We can do it.
Yeah, um, you know, we can, and we definitely can, and we will figure it out. And it's not really, you don't need that much. A decently, relatively thick, or not thick, a thin piece of steel plate,
Yeah, I'm gonna
and
say I think mine's only. I think it might be 16th.
yeah,
I don't think well, it might be a little bigger than 16th. Might be an eighth. I bet you it's eighth actually. I think 16th was on it, and I upgraded to 1/8. I was gonna go with the quarter inch, but I thought it'd be way too much weight, right? Because I mean, a
Hmm.
Ranger's not a heavy vehicle,
No.
so
No, I mean, you go down to Canadian Tire, you buy the skinned repair panels. Those would work. If you want to take even the jacket off of a hot water tank, not very thick. It's definitely not an eighth. It's probably a 16th,
yeah,
but
I was
it's
gonna say it's
pretty
probably
tough
16th.
material. Right? It'll take quite a beating before you'll puncture it, which is all you're trying to do. Prevent something from going up and hitting something more vital.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
that's exactly it. You don't want it to be. You don't need it to be titanium and never ding. That's not the point. It's meant to be cheaper to replace than the parts it's protecting. So
yeah.
I think I used an old oil tank for mine. Somebody was getting rid of like an old oil tank, and I had a reciprocating saw, and I went and I just cut a big panel out of it, honestly. And I took
Yeah.
that home and
And
I
it's
doctored that up.
Yeah, and that's plenty thick and strong. I mean, you can probably jack that vehicle up on that on a one
With a
inch
log,
to
you
two,
can. We've done that.
right? Without really pushing through it. Like if you have the average jack pad, you could probably put that almost anywhere and not do any true damage to it. It'll buckle near the center, I'm sure,
Yeah,
but that's about it.
it's already dented and dinged a little bit. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's never gone anywhere near any of the vital things that I'm protecting. It's never ripped through. In the instance, I actually broke not this truck, but my old truck. Same kind of deal, same kind of setup, just a little cheaper skid plates. Actually, I think I used. What did I use on that? It was a piece of galvanized metal out of an old rail car, something like that. Anyway, whatever I could find, scrap metal. We have a metal dealer down here, and you just go down and you buy stuff. Um,
Yeah,
so in any case, I put that under it, and we broke a tie rod end in the woods. There was three of us in the truck, and it was full of gear, and I had a chainsaw, and we literally just cut a tree long enough that we made a lever, and we put it under the truck, and we actually did. You ever see a rope winch?
yeah,
So we had all kinds of rope with us, and we made a rope wrench enough that we could pick the weight up. We never even lifted off the ground, but we got the
yeah,
weight off it enough that we could slap the ball joint back into place because the ball was there and it popped the cup off. And we
yeah.
slapped it back on, and we had rabbit snare wire with us, and we wired it back together to get us at least somewhere where we could work on it a little better.
I had to do a very similar repair on a dump truck one time.
Oh, that's
We
way heavier.
Yeah, well, so we were backing up. I remember I backed the dump truck up. It was in Grand Falls. I was working for a Newfoundland vegetation control, and they would, if the owner was still around, he'd probably shoot me for telling the story. But I get back there, and I dump the truck, and we start to go forward, and all of a sudden I got no gears. Like the gear shifter actually came up my hand moved around. I put it down, and then it just moved slow. And I was like, what the hell happened? Now, it used to come up in your hand a lot. just had to pop it back in the socket. It was fine. So I got underneath looking, and sure enough, where it joined into the transmission, there's like a little ball that comes out of it. And there's a knob that goes over it. It slipped off. So we're in the dump. I'm looking around, and I found an old coat hanger. And I got a multi-tool. It was probably not this one, because I think I broke it, and then I returned it, and I got this one here. But I cut a section of it out. I shoved through the hole, and I wrapped it around. Same idea as you with the rabbit snare. I drove that around for like a week and a half before they took that away from us to give us something else.
Okay, I wasn't that bad. I drove like 30 minutes up the road, but I mean, it worked. It was that's kind of another qualification for a bush vehicle or a budget or a bushcraft vehicle. Something that, with luck, you can kind of cobble together to get you through a bad spot. And I mean, that means a little bit of ease access underneath, because I mean, some of these I'm trying to think, some of these newer vehicles, it's almost like you need a engineering degree in rocket science to get just into where you need to work on stuff. Like if you jack up Mel's car, it literally looks like a dinky. The whole thing is like closed in, and like they make excellent use of room. I'll give them that. But everything is like right on top of itself. You cannot work around anything unless you disassemble half the car.
You get under my car, and they got like a felt blanket going from the front to the back. It's thick, it's heavy, probably plasticized somehow. You can't see anything. There's nothing under the seat. There's 2 or 3 like vents and a couple of doors. If you want to change the oil, you open up 2 doors. One is where the oil filter is, and the other is where the oil drain is.
Yeah, see, not ideal circumstances for if you were in the woods.
And my grandfather, he was a heavy-duty mechanic, worked on machines all his life. And he went to a dealership one time to try and sell him. I think it was a Ford Ranger at the time. And I'm not knocking your Ranger, but he was a Nissan guy. He loved Nissans. But he showed up, and they were trying to sell him this vehicle. Come on, he said, come on, look at the engine. We got a great engine in this. So he popped the hood up. Granddad said he looked in. All he seen was a plastic sheet. You know, like the cover over the top of the engine. Like, there's no visible engine anymore. And Granddad was looking at it, and the guy was right proud of himself. And Granddad's like, close it before I get sick. What do you mean? He said, if I took a bucket of water and threw it in there, I'd be waiting 5 days for it to come out the bottom side.
But that's exactly it. And all new vehicles are going that way. Like, they're just so compartmentalized. You can't work on anything on your own anymore. Lawrence here was saying he's got an old Ford Explorer, and you and I had talked about those too. And in the newer ones of those, like really new, like I can't remember the last year I was looking at, but it was probably like 2013, 14. I'm just grabbing a number. I could be wrong. Same thing. You pop that open. It's like everything is just so closed in.
Oh, yeah. The brother-in-law got one, and you know it's a fine vehicle for what he needs it for and all that. Big, comfy room. He's got the leather options. He's got all the bells and whistles and stuff. Like he doesn't buy entry-level vehicles. Can't blame him. But I don't know that it'd be a great off-road vehicle anymore. It's changed a lot, but I think they had a belt go in it one day and kind of left them stranded.
Like the serpentine belt?
Yeah.
Because on my old 99 Ranger, once again, we're going to use an example here. If you broke the serpentine belt, you could literally reach in and change it in the parking lot. You didn't need any special tools, nothing like that. There was actually the tension on the idler arm was just enough that it kept it tight, but it was loose enough that if you put the belt over it and you ran it under the 3 bottom pulleys and then pulled, it would push it over, and you get your hand down and lock it in and then thread the rest of it on and pop it right back on. I had done it a couple times. Now, this Ranger I have, to change the passenger spark plugs, you have to remove the passenger wheel, take out the wheel well, and disconnect the air conditioner, I think. Just to change the spark plugs. Because the back 2 you can't get a wrench into without making room.
Yeah. And that is the fact. Like the newer vehicles aren't meant for ease of maintenance, and it can be frustrating for anyone who's working on one because they didn't intend for you to get in there and change the spark plugs. They didn't intend for you to do anything. They want you to change the air filter, the oil, and Anything else, they expect you to bring it into the dealership. And really, I don't even think they want you doing that. I believe I heard, and I don't know if you may have heard the same thing. There are a couple of manufacturers out there now that are sealing their engines.
No, that's new to me. I wouldn't doubt it in the slightest, to be honest with you, the way things are
I'm not
going.
sure. I'm pretty sure it was a higher end vehicle, maybe like a Rolls Royce or one of these types. But there's a couple that have sealed engines, like like batteries used to be made. You could maintain your battery. Now they're sealed batteries. You don't do anything with them. When they stop working, you throw them out. I've heard that
Hmm.
there are there's now a couple of manufacturers that made an engine that's sealed, and it's maintained at the dealership. They have the ability to open and close it as it's required, but it's not intended for the owners to do. I don't know if that's 100% true or if it was something somebody was working on. But if it doesn't exist now, it will. It's
Oh, for
coming.
sure. Like they are taking the ease, and maybe this is old Rob's aluminum foil cap coming out here, but I'm a firm believer that the industry is making it so they continue to make money off you. You know the old saying, doctors don't make money off healthy patients, or first maybe it's pharmaceutical companies don't make money off healthy patients. I firmly believe that in the car industry and a lot of other things too. You're not going to make money off a vehicle that lasts and is easily serviceable by the owner. So they try to get away from both of those things, in my opinion. Once again, that could be the old tinfoil hat with the spiral coming off it and the aliens beaming things into my brain, but conspiracy, Rob. Anyway, uh,
I knew a guy who used to work in a dealership for motorcycles, and I used to have some pretty good chats with the man. And he said Suzuki, I think it was Suzuki he worked for. They used to come here to Nova Scotia a couple times a year to test some of their bikes. They'd show up, they had a couple of test drivers, and they just drive in different terrains, different environments, see how they handled and stuff. He said they ranked their vehicles on a scale of 1 to 10. If it scored under 5 and over 7, they failed it. Over 7 was too good. They didn't want to sell something that was too good because people wouldn't get tired of it. They'd want to keep it. It would outlast too long. They wanted something that was fairly good but not great. And it was apparently sort of a game to them. You know what I mean? I think you're right. I think that they could have made a vehicle years ago that would never rust. There's composite materials out there that don't rust. There's metals out there that don't rust. They could have made ones or virtually never rust. And there's coatings they could have put on it that are virtually indestructible. They could have done it, but they want you to have to change body panels. They want you to have to replace the engines every 300,000 kilometers or whatever.
oh, I completely agree. Same as the other big conspiracy was somebody made a carburetor in the 80s that would get you something like 100 mile a gallon or maybe even more. I can't remember, but it just, oil companies had no interest in it, so they never backed it.
Yeah, so I find that one kind of, it's got to be more than just a carburetor. I mean, if you think, an engine runs on a fuel mixture, um, and fuel has a limited amount of power. Believe it or not, though, a large percentage of your fuel is lost completely to heat. And if you could find a way to recuperate that heat, you'd actually get much better mileage. But there is a certain amount of joules per ounce or per liter of fuel, and that's all you're going to get out of it. Turning around saying you've tripled the gas mileage with a carburetor, I don't believe that.
And that's fair. Like I don't know enough to give it credit or disprove it, to be honest with you. Like I
Fuel
mechanically
injection
adventurous.
fuel injection is generally better than carburetor. That's why we went with it. It's more accurate and all that. There's different things they can do. They have engines that can shut down cylinders and stuff like that. Some of it I think is a little gimmicky. They have the ability now to shut. Well, they've had it for years. Golf carts had it for years. You drive up to this, when you stop, the engine shuts down. When you push the gas, it'll start up and go again. That's now in cars.
Yeah,
So
the
there's some neat.
Chevy Cruze was the first one I seen with that, and it freaked me out the first time it happened.
Yeah. Stop.
I was like, "What just happened? Did it break your car?" I'm like, "Sorry, man. What's going on?" He's like, "Oh no, it does that." I'm like, "What do you mean it does that?" Uh oh. Somebody just bailed in. Are you gonna say hi? Wave. Watch your toes. Come here. Yeah. Somebody decided to join the conversation tonight, so. Oh, she got a haircut.
Whoa.
Oh, careful. You might deafen some people out there. All right, you going to bed? All right, run off to bed. Love ya. Have a good night. You're not going. But anyway, where was I? I don't know where we were going. Can you refresh my memory there, Ben?
We're talking about conspiracy theories, really, how to get the most out of your vehicle, and probably way off topic. It's an interesting conversation.
Oh, yes, yes. I did have a thought in my head to try and put us back on track. Because you had mentioned you can only get so much energy out of gasoline. Now, would you rather a gasoline engine or a diesel engine for a bushcrafting truck? Or vehicle, not truck. And why? Because I know what I would rather, but I'm curious as to what you would rather.
I would take, personally, gas.
And your reasoning?
There's a couple reasonings. One, gas is more easily obtainable here in North America.
It's fair.
Diesel sold at most gas stations, true, and there's options. But the reality is, the other thing is, fuel lines on diesel are higher pressure. So if you have any problems with your fuel lines, it's a hell of a lot harder to fix. And honestly, I'm not as familiar with repairing of a diesel engine.
Yeah, and like diesels don't run off spark plugs, as most people are aware. They run off compression.
Yeah, well, you have a glow plug to get its initial ignition, but after that,
is that ignition, or is that just warming the fuel so it vaporizes, compresses, and ignites under pressure easier? Because that was my understanding.
Well, you heat it up. It's pressure and heat that causes the combustion. And in fact, your gas engine, well, diesel, it's a function of your spark plugs overheated, and you had a few other problems. You will actually continue to have ignition, and top fuel drag racers will actually melt their spark plugs partway through. I've been told a run, and the last of the run is actually done through a process called dieseling, where the compression is enough to ignite the fuel and continue the combustion process. But yeah, you heat it up, you turn it around, you don't have the speed and the compression originally. That heating spark plug helps you get your initial few from my understanding, few combustions, and after that it's more of an automatic process. And the process to shut it down is to remove the fuel.
Fair enough. Now, see, I'm the other end on that, and this is my reasoning to this. I prefer diesel, and I think it's because I was spoiled with diesel once. We had an old Ford Ranger with a diesel engine that I swear I only put fuel in maybe once a month. Like, ridiculous amount of fuel mileage out of it. Not as much power as you would think compared. Like, most people think, oh, diesel engines, you get a lot of power. This was an old Ranger. I think it was in its 80s. It didn't have the power that the gas equivalent had, but it had way better fuel economy. But the thing that I liked about it was it was pretty easy to convert over to burning cooking oil. And that's something I always wanted to get back into trying. Now, myself, I have never done it, but a buddy that used to live up the road from us in Marigamish, he had an old International or something like that, and literally it was, he just put a tank behind a seat, and he had a little switch for the fuel pumps. And he would run the truck off diesel in the colder months and get it going until the cab warmed up and it warmed the oil up. Then he'd flip the switch and it'd switch to the secondary fuel pump, which would basically just pump straight cooking oil into this thing, which was great because it smelled like a basket of French fries going down the road, right? That's the big classic thing, and it literally does. But I mean, what a great way to, in the spirit of bushcrafting and preservation and stuff, because I mean, maybe it's just me. One, you're reusing something that would have been thrown out as waste, and two, I imagine the emissions off that must be lower than what it would be off diesel, would it? You might know more on that than I would.
I'm not sure on that one, but do you have access to that much vegetable oil?
In my line of work, yes.
But that for me, that's one of the things I've thought about it before, because you can even without the switchover option, there's an enzyme you can buy, and essentially all you do is you have to heat the oil up to a certain temperature. I don't know what it is. It's not all that hot. You put this enzyme in it. You leave it for 4 or 5 days, and it is essentially diesel. It'll turn it into a diesel fuel or an equivalent, and that you can burn in pretty well straight into any diesel vehicle.
Now, I don't know if it would still be the same nowadays, but once again, Steve, when he told me about it, he said if you go to any restaurant that basically has waste oil, they can't get
Yeah.
rid of the stuff because it costs them to dispose of it. So if you just pull up and you're like, hey, I want your waste oil and I'll take it for free, at the time, I don't know if it's still true or not. He said he never had a problem getting it. Like they were more than happy to let him collect it and get it out of their hands. Now, granted, at that he had to take this home and he had to filter it. Like he had like this
Yeah.
3-stage filter system. He put the big containment container, or sorry, the big container up top, and it went through like this initial filter that removed all the big particulate, and then another one that removed something else. To the last one it went through was basically a coffee filter.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. So there's a process for that, and it definitely has its interest. I've always kind of been curious. Like, I don't know many people that work at fast food restaurants, and I've heard that there's been in places where they've actually had to lock the grease traps because people were stealing their oil. So there may be companies now buying it. I don't know if it's as lucrative as it used to be or if it's feasible.
I don't know
Um,
either, honestly. It's
but I
just
don't.
always been a dream of mine. You know what? Have a basically a fry truck. I want to get an old diesel engine, slap a body kit on it that looks like a giant French fry, and drive down the highway smelling like French fries. This is on my bucket list, and I don't know how I'm gonna make it happen, but I'm gonna make it happen. You know the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile that looks like a hot dog? Well, I want
Yeah.
the Robert French fry mobile that looks like a fry and smells like a fry going down the road.
And then one day you'll wonder why a bear is chewing on the back of your car.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, but anyway, we kind of digressed a little bit off our topic there. I mean, it was a good talk, but we did digress. So jumping back on topic a little bit, um, bushcrafting vehicles. So you do have a few in mind. You and I had talked about it. Are you still looking at the same kind that the same handful that you were telling me about? And do you have
I'm
a preference set in mind at this point, without leaking too much
no,
information out of your personal life?
I'm still looking. I haven't really truly gotten the budget yet. It's not that I don't have the money, but we have money earmarked for a lot of things. So it's not something I'm really ready to rush out and get. But it is starting to become an issue where I do want to take more and more trips out like I used to. And, the vehicles we have aren't ideal for it. And it'd be nice to have that kind of beater backwoods thing. And the reality is, none of these things are essential. Like you could do it with a shitty 4-cylinder, 2-wheel, front-wheel drive car and get 90% of the places that I would ever try to go. We were talking about old vehicles. I mean, my Nova I took in most places, but I had a Dodge Shadow. You remember Dodge Shadows?
Yes, I do actually. My mother had one back when I was probably 11 or 12.
Yeah. So I had one. I had a 1989 Dodge Shadow. And it used to sit really low in the back end. And I went down to the dump one day, and there was a set of springs with the exact same diameter as the springs on my Shadow. So I said, I want those, and I brought them home. And I was dating a girl who was a mechanic at the time, and I went to the school where I was going, and she was a student there. And I said, can you put those springs in the back? And I'd like to jack them up a little bit. So I bought these 2-inch spacers. I gave them to her, and she said, okay, not a problem. I went to class, and I came back a couple hours later and walked in the thing, and they said, we got your springs in, but we couldn't fit the spacers. They said, your sway bar is too short to handle it. I said, oh, okay. Just take it off the jacks, and we'll see how she sits. And they're like, that's not on jacks. And from behind the vehicle, you could see the rear axle, you could see the sway bar going up, the whole thing set. You went into the back. It used to be the quarter panel, like the wheel well, and the top of the tire were pretty well neck and neck, and the tire used to go inside the wheel well. You could get your fist cleanly over the top of the tire and not risk touching bodywork anywhere.
So there's one thing. Maybe if you pick up a cheaper vehicle, you just put a lift kit in and get your
Well,
clearance.
I don't know what the springs came off of, right? They were brand new springs. They had little tags on them. They were just sitting in the dump. Like there's like a all but a rainbow coming down on them. You know what I mean? I walked in. We did a lot of shopping in the dump when I grew up.
Oh
It
man, I
was
still have a tent sitting out in my sunroom right there that I pulled out of the. No, no, I didn't take it this year. But the very first year we went to the Nova Scotia Bushcraft gathering, it was the one that was over my tent. That
oh
was a
yeah,
dump find.
those ones are awesome. They don't let you go into dumps like they
No,
used
they
to.
don't. They have no haha about taking stuff out of a dump anymore. They're really against it.
When I go into dump now, I see all this kind of cool shit. I'm like, why are you hiding this stuff from us? Why can't I take this? This is still good.
And that's the
Yeah.
thing. You'd think they would open up and be like, oh, yeah, you want it? You take it. It's one less thing that we have to get rid of, and it's reusing something. But
Oh, you go to dump here in for the one for Hants County here, and you walk into it, and there's a pile of old bicycles, all frames and stuff. Most of them look like they're still usable. You know what I mean? You could spend a couple hours there. I bet you could come out with 4 or 5 bikes.
oh, for sure.
All kinds of things. If you're into welding and stuff, or the stuff you could make, and wood products you could reclaim and stuff. No, it's all there. We're gonna burn that. We're gonna just push this into the landfill. It's gone, right? Can't leave with it.
Well,
Crazy.
that's once again, they don't believe in reclaiming stuff. They want you to buy new, right? And once again, the old tinfoil hat comes out. Maybe it's a giant conspiracy, but that seems to be the way they go. They don't want anything reclaimed or repurposed. They want everything bought new.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, like I said, we don't need all this stuff. This is stuff that I want. What do you need to get out into the woods? Honestly, you need to be able to get to the woods.
You need to be able to get to where you want to go in the woods. I mean, yes, you can get to the woods. We did that successfully on our motorcycles. But if we had more of a bushcrafty vehicle or backwoods vehicle, if you want to call it that, we probably could have got a lot closer to our end game than we did. But in all honesty, on that trip, I think you and I had the right idea. Yeah, it was a little bit of hiking, but I think that shot through was probably even closer than where the road would have ended if we had to come up it in a truck. And I think
Yeah.
we had a little easier time of it because of that. But anyway, I digress. You need to get to where you want to go in the woods, uh, and get there safely with what you want to take with you, be it your family, your gear, both, friends, whatever, and then return home.
Yeah. You need to be able to fit your gear in. You need to put your company in, whoever's coming with you, your wife, your kids, your dog, your friend, whatever. Some hobo you met on the side of the street. I don't know. It doesn't really matter.
Oh my
You want to
God,
be
do you
able
want to hear? Remind me, and I'll tell you a story about hobo found on the side of the street. And I hope he hears this sometime when I tell the story.
you want some hitchhiking stories? We could that could be a whole episode, buddy.
Well, this one is relevant because it's based around the waterfalls and how I found them.
Okay.
So
Yeah. But anyways, like I said, you want to get out. So almost any vehicle will do it. All the things we listed are nice to haves. The bush guards up front or the skid plates underneath, 4x4. My first truck was a 2-wheel drive truck. I never got it stuck. I don't know that it's necessary to have a 4x4. Guys who own them will swear by them, but the reality is, you know what you're at, and you take your time. You can usually get most places. And
I think I've had my truck for 4 or 5 years now, and I bet you I can count on my hands how many times I've put that in 4-wheel drive.
Yeah. When I had the 4x4 pickup, I put it on 4x4 more or less for fun because I was told you should cycle it through on a fairly regular basis or they'll seize up.
And it will develop flat spots on the axles if they're not turning. Like they'll sit there and they'll rattle, and you'll get these weird globes on them, and it just makes clunking and grinding. That I do know from experience.
Yeah. So I used to throw it in every now and then. Go on a dirt road, just flick it on, play.
Yep.
That's what you need to do. It's great to have, and the wisest thing I think if somebody who owned one ever had, he said a 4x4 gets you out of what 2-wheel drive got you into.
Well, Chris asks, would it really be bushcraft if you're using a vehicle? My opinion, yes. Bushcrafting, I think we said it way back in one of our first episodes. Bushcrafting is not just going out in the woods and surviving. That's
No.
that's survival. Bushcrafting, to me anyway, is just getting out and enjoying the woods. However you get there, that's still part of it. If you walk in, you bike in, you get hella dropped in, like whatever, doesn't matter. Like that's still part of the bushcraft adventure is getting there.
Yeah, and if you live in the middle of, say, Halifax, and you want to say without the vehicle, you could walk a day before you really get to a decent grove of woods big enough that you can really camp in. Like you have a distance to go before you can truly, really legally camp. If you want to get out to backwoods lakes and stuff and hit fish that lakes that are rarely fished and stuff like that, you do need to go greater distances. And maybe you can do it with a bus or whatever, but any car will get you further. If you don't mind driving on a dirt road, it opens up new avenues. At some point, yes, I still think you should get out and walk. If me and just because your vehicle got you there doesn't mean you're going to stay there with that vehicle the whole time. I'm packed to go. I have my backpack. I'm going to go more or less vehicle camping in a few days. And I'm probably going to camp somewhat close to the vehicle this time, but we're going to spend time on lakes and stuff. We're going to do stuff. Get to Keji. How do you get to Keji without a vehicle?
Exactly. I mean, staying next to the vehicle, as you said, there's times where I'll just throw my gear on the four wheeler and I'll drive out and I'll stay with the vehicle. But that was still part of the adventure, was getting there.
You still probably cut some wood up. You had a fire. You may have made some traps or whatever. It doesn't really matter what you did while you're out there. You may have just lit on the woods and looked at the stars. It's all good.
Exactly. It's all still part of the adventure.
You get your hammock or you build your shelter, or if you stay into the winter camping, maybe you get a little wood stove or thing, which these are things that I'm starting to see people posting pictures up. I think Jeremy from Wolf 902 started posting some pictures of a wood stove he's building.
Yeah, an ammo can wood stove.
Yeah.
So I chatted to him about it very briefly at the gathering there. And for anybody that hasn't seen it yet, might as well plug that here. Both on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page, we did do a video from the gathering where it was Ben, myself, and Jeremy sat down and just had a little chat. Pretty good video. We give a shout out to everybody that we mentioned in the video, so definitely go check it out. The links are all under it. And if you haven't heard of these people before, definitely look them up and check them out, especially Jeremy. He was kind enough, as I said, to sit down and chat with us. You had an outing with him there, and I think you're probably planning more in the future as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I'm hoping to continue that. I mean, I'm hoping to get trips out with you. I'm hoping to get we met a bunch of people at the Bushcraft weekend. There was talks of some other trips possibly this fall. There is potential. I may try to host something later the fall. We'll see. We really haven't discussed that yet. You don't really know about that. I owe you an explanation after this.
We will chat. And I'll give you my random hobo hitchhiker story.
You're not the only one, but a conversation I have with somebody makes a lot of sense. So we'll see what we can rig up. But getting out, anything that helps you get out there and improve the experience, I consider part of bushcrafting. And your vehicle, your means to get there is an important part. It's right up there with the boots you wear, the pack you carry, the axe you carry, the saw, the stove you're cooking on. I mean, you got thousands of options for all these things. But in the end, every one of these tools, is it necessary for bushcraft? No.
Nope.
I think me and you, and I say this with full honesty, I think we both have a fair number of skills. I don't think we're the greatest bushcrafters in the world. I really don't. I think we're both quick to admit to that. But we would probably be able to go out there with little more than what we normally carry on our person every day, and be fairly comfortable for a period of 5 or 6 days potentially. You might starve, but
yeah, I was about to say we might get hungry, but we won't. We would survive, that's for sure.
One of us will starve quicker than the other, and that's changed over the years.
I don't know, man. Us fluffy people, we get hungry fast.
Oh, you get hungry, but I I don't have any more fluff to give up.
That's fair. I have lots of fluff, but
uh, I'm starting to miss some of it. It gets cold so much quicker too. Uh, but no, I mean, I usually carry a pocket knife on me at any given time. With that pocket knife and levers and dead wood and stuff, I could build a shelter. I could keep myself out of the weather. I could probably in time get a fire going. Maybe not as quick as others. I think yourself got a bit more skill in that level. The shoelaces on my boots, I could make a friction fire most likely. I'd have to, you know.
one of the only times I'm not actually wearing my paracord bracelet because I washed it. I know, sacrilege, but it was starting to smell a little funky.
Can't have funky smells, man.
It was getting funky. So anyway, but yeah, no, I completely agree.
But that doesn't mean that if I'm going out on a planned outing that I'm going to say, well, I don't need this, I don't need that. I definitely overpack. I think I've seen you pack. I think you're in the same boat. When we pack food, we both tend to pack more food than we really need.
Oh God, I think between the two of us, we probably had enough food for the two of us to last a week, and we were there for 2 days, 3 days if you count Friday. But I mean, we took the steaks and we ate those Friday. That was the meal, and then the food other than the steaks, we had plenty to go for 7 days. Probably longer if we skimped it a little and augmented it with some wild edibles and foraging.
Oh, and this time of year now, berries and stuff are starting to come right. Options are getting better and better. Oh, the temptations, right? But nobody wants to be out there miserable. And you take your food, you take your comforts, you know, you take your phone, I take Bic lighter. I know it's sacrilege in bushcraft world. What? You're not using a ferro rod for everything?
But yeah, it's good that you know how to use a ferro rod, but what's easier than a lighter? I'm even one worse. I got whatever the heck this thing is. It doesn't even have a flicker on it. It's just
I got a smaller version, like a little
yeah,
baby
there,
one.
same thing.
But old standby Bic. My grandfather. I mean, he spent most of his life in the woods doing things. A great woodsman in his own right, and he used to take a Bic lighter. He used to take a piece of cardboard, wrap around it, and he'd wrap it in electrical tape, nice and tight. Keep water from getting near the top end of it. He just slid it over, kept it nice and tight, kept a couple of those in his pocket. He never went in the woods without a lighter. I don't think.
I don't go
Why?
in the woods without a lighter. When you and I went, yes, I used a ferro rod to start the fire, but you know what was in my backpack? Two
A lighter?
lighters. Two lighters. One was a Bic and one's a stormproof lighter.
Yeah. I also have flint and steel. I have a few other options there. I like playing with different methods, but the reality is, instant flame is instant flame, right?
You never know what could happen.
Read something on Facebook the other day. It said something that if you can't conjure flame directly from hell, store-bought version is just as good.
I love that. But anyway, we're kind of sliding off topic again here, so why don't we, unless you had anything else to say on it, we're coming up on about an hour and 20 minutes. Do you want
Got a
to...
serious matter. Is there anyone who has a really good bushcraft vehicle that they're just throwing away, just send it my way. I'll come pick it up. Don't worry about it. I'll just take it away for you. You don't have to worry about getting tow truck companies or anything. Let me know.
Don't have to get them guys involved at all. But yeah, what about you guys? We did have a few people on here. Chris and Troy and Lawrence was here and Jamie was here for a little bit. And everybody popped in, said hi. But anybody that's watching this later on whatever format or media you happen to be listening to it on, pop back either on one of our videos, one of our pages, something like that. Let us know what you look for in a bushcraft video. We did have a short conversation we posted up a few days ago. There's a lot of great comments on there. I'd really like to expand on that and get your guys' thoughts. Like, what do you look for in a bushcraft vehicle? What do you look for to not be in a bushcraft vehicle? Like, for me, it's low aspect tires. You want some good meat. Like, that's just me. Like, I mean, what do you look for in a vehicle to get you to the woods and maybe even a little further into the woods? Somebody posted up, I can't think of it right off the top of my head, but it was one of those carts with the bicycle wheel on it. That thing's great for getting your gear to your campsite. Now, you can expand on that. Like, there's those motorized bicycles. I've seen some people slap bags on those, and a buddy of mine, like, he will literally take his anywhere. Doesn't matter where, he will figure out how to get it there. So, what is your guys' thoughts, opinions, options, goods, bads, ins, outs off a bushcrafting vehicle? Keep in mind, we're not looking for a mud toy where you're just going to take and beat the snot out of this thing. As Ben said at the start, it has to be preferably road legal, be able to carry some cargo and passengers, and get you where you want to go and back home. So, what's your guys' thoughts? What about you, Ben?
I say, if you're while you're at it, if you got a vehicle that you take in the woods, send us a picture. And it could be the Mazda 3. I think I can't remember who. Actually, I do remember who. I'm just going to get his name wrong. But he said Mazda 3, and honestly, like, I've been in the woods a tons of times and seen little tiny cars in the woods, places
Hyundai
where you
Pony.
wouldn't expect. What?
The Hyundai Pony.
My brother has one of the smaller Jeeps, a Renegade, I think maybe it is. He said he's gone back in places in the woods with his. He loves his. He said he got back to one time. There was a couple out there on one of these like little side by sides, awesome vehicles in their own right. And he said he looked at the woman and she was giving her husband a hard look. And he said the image going through her head is her getting right pissed at him. We went not this stupid side by side. You can get a Jeep back.
And yeah, so anything you guys want to kind of drop in on us there, like
Love to see hear stories of things you've taken in the woods and how it's worked out for you and how it hasn't worked out for you. Those are the best stories.
Exactly.
But yeah, feel free.
Failure stories are the funniest. And just to throw some ideas out there to get you guys rolling, because sometimes you don't talk to us so well. What's your thoughts on like wenches, snorkels, lift kits? Like this is all part of bushcraft vehicles. We didn't talk a whole lot on them tonight because I personally believe those are personal preferences and not requirements of bushcraft vehicles. Would you tend to agree, Ben?
Oh yeah, I mean, they're not requirements. They really aren't, but they're good to have, and everything gives you a new advantage in a certain situation. Honestly, should you be driving your vehicle down rivers? Probably not. Do you need to cross small lakes and ponds?
Probably not.
Maybe.
Now, see,
Is it great for the environment? Definitely not.
no. See, I'm against snorkels for a bushcrafting vehicle only because I would do something stupid with it. And I know I would be the guy like out in the middle of the lake paddling away on my now submerged submarine, and that'd be the end of it. But I mean, what's your guys' thoughts on them? There's tons of accessories you can jam on these things. Let us know some of your favorites. Ones that haven't worked out good for you, like Ben said.
I mean, I'd have a sport bike like yours, but I'd be dead.
Hey, mine's a sport touring. I got rid of my sport bike.
I love how you get touring stuck on the end of it, right?
Hey, that's what my insurance says it is, and that's what I'm sticking to. But anyway, yeah, anything bushcraft vehicle related, guys, we'd love to hear from you. Maybe this is something, if there's enough interest and we can get some guys on, we will pick this back up. Maybe we can get Jeremy on. His vehicle's pretty beefed up for the bushcrafting, if anybody's ever seen that.
That's a top secret, buddy. You be careful talking about Jeremy's vehicle.
Okay, we won't mention Jeremy's vehicle then, but
he hinted on it on our page, so I think we can admit that he has a vehicle. We have both seen it, and he is planning on unveiling it on a future episode. So
all right, then maybe after.
Yes. And when he does, we would love to do a little talk with him about it, and maybe something will happen there. We'll see. Maybe if I can convince the wife to approve lay budget, there will be an Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures vehicle that we will be touting as part of our channel. We could do a whole series on upgrades and modifications.
I got light bars for you, buddy. That's one thing I do got.
Yeah. Light bars, a paint job, maybe a couple of row bars.
I'm telling you right now, the only paint job you need is rock guard. Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about that fancy stuff. Just carry a case of rock guard in the back. You scratch that sucker, fixed. Looks like she just got painted.
I kind of like the bed liner idea.
Yeah, bed liner, rocker guard, even the cheap asphalt undercoating, if you can actually get the stuff to dry, isn't so bad. Buddy of mine used to run a Ranger, and that's where I got the idea. I thought it was brilliant until he started painting the inside of it, and then I thought he was just a little weird.
My Ranger was definitely rock guarded the whole way, all
Oh,
the way around.
most of mine is the bottom 6 inches. I think is all rocker guard, not because it's to keep the stone chips away. It's because there's nothing else there.
Yeah. Mine was there was no paint left on mine. It was all rocker guarded, and it sucks because dust sticks to it and you cannot wash it off. It was the
I don't
I
wash my
owned
truck anyway.
I owned the ugliest truck in Nova Scotia. There's no doubt in my mind it was.
All right, well, I'll show you pictures someday.
I'll see if I have any pictures of mine. It was when I bought it. It was a Ford Ranger. The rear quarter panels were in such bad shape that I cut them off and I pounded new ones with a sandbag and a hammer, riveted them on in spots. The supports to the quarter panels wouldn't.
Yep.
I replaced that with a piece of stair thread, and I just drove wood screws in through the frame to hold it in place. Painted the whole thing with the rocker guard. It originally had a wooden rack screwed with deck screws onto the bed that extended over the cab. It had
canoes?
white. What?
For your canoes?
I didn't put it there. The guy who owned
Oh.
it for me was moved people, and he had white racing stripes up the middle. He had the front grille was painted white with I think a broom was what he used.
Okay, you got me beat. Yours does sound worse than mine.
It was hideous, man. And then I eventually did rip that wooden rack off, although it was awesome because you could sleep right above the cab on top of it and stuff. And you scrape. I got a dark green cap put on top of it for a while there, and I drove it around. But the beauty of something like that, it was so old, so beat up. It used to tick like a typewriter when it drove. Was if you seen a dirt road or something, you didn't care. You just drove up it, right?
And that is a big requirement of me for a bushcrafting vehicle is old enough you don't mind getting it scuffed up.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Something that's, down to its last, few 100,000 kilometers or so.
It's been loved on the road, now it needs to be loved in the woods.
Yeah, and but still in good enough shape that you can get it past. Not so much rust. I'd rather it has very little rust in the body because that's what kills vehicles here.
Oh, for
it
sure.
really is.
That's how I lost my last 3 vehicles, so I'd still be running them. They just rotted out.
Yeah. So if I can find something with not too much rust and, still a working drivetrain, I'll replace brakes and wheel bearings, things like that, the odd strap or a small piece, and get out there and enjoy it and bang around and have fun. And if you haven't invested thousands and thousands of dollars into it, if it breaks, you don't worry. You just get another one in a few months when you build up the money again. You know what I mean?
I used to buy a truck a year. I know exactly what you mean. Every year, bought a new truck. Well, not new to me. Somebody else's problems that I have inherited. But in any case,
but great topic. We've definitely gone longer than we like,
and we went down a whole bunch of paths we probably shouldn't have. But you know what? I think it's all still good information. Hopefully, even some of the topics we covered that weren't bushcrafty related, like combustion engines and whatnot, somebody's bound to find it interesting at some point.
Well, it's similar to our first ones. Our first ones rambled like this, and I think people enjoyed those too. So the last couple have been a little more stilted in some ways, I think. More focused. I like to do this occasionally. And,
so do I. I like the ramblings because it's fun. It's fun for us. Hopefully, everybody out there has a good time with them too, because this is how we are. When we were in the woods, our topics just like bounced around.
Yeah. A lot of them were bushcraft topics, and then we'd end up on complete tangents, and that's cool. That's kind of who we are, and we don't pretend to be people that we're not. Like we are who we are.
And as you seen when my daughter ran, and I'm not gonna give her heck for busting in. She's part of my life, right? And that's what we are. We're pretty much open and raw. And I think, well, you've even done a show with your daughter, which was amazing. So once mine gets older, maybe I'll try the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and my daughter's bugging me for my next trip to take her. I think, unfortunately, it's not going to happen this time, but we've got trips planned, and we're going to do more and more stuff. And it's the thing I enjoy. I know it's the thing that you enjoy, and we're making more and more contacts through this form, this medium. So I see things growing. But yeah, we're gonna call this like we always end this. Get out there, have fun, share your adventures with us. We want to hear about it. We do not take responsibility for anything you do in the woods, but we do want to hear about it. And if it goes bad, really tell us, because sometimes they're the best stories. But
As long as
be,
everything worked out fine in the end and you're safe and well, we love to hear failure stories because you learn a lot about failure stories too. I mean, I've had my fair share of them. I'm not going to lie about that. I've probably had more failure stories than success stories.
you, what is it you said before? You don't fail, you learn what didn't work.
Yeah, it's not me that said it. It's actually might be a famous quote. Maybe it's only famous to me because I'm a nerd. But you never truly fail. You only learn what doesn't work.
Yeah. Um, it's kind of true, but when you get out there, it's those misadventures, those not necessarily failures, things that didn't happen the way you expected them to, or the way you wanted them to. You went out expecting beautiful weather and there was a storm. That's not a failure. That's a change in circumstances. But those are sometimes the best stories, like my tent collapsing. It's something I always remember, you know?
And it's fair. But yeah, as always, guys, gals, people, be safe. Have fun. Get dirty. But as always, be safe. We want to hear from you. We don't want to hear a news story about something that went wrong. So be safe. Let people know where you're at. But have fun.
Yeah.
So I completely lost my train of thought. So I guess that's it for me tonight. Let's get there before I say anything else. All right, everybody. You have yourselves a good night.
Head off.